So for so for secondary school, there are 4 papers. You'll be sitting for the O-level paper at the end of Sec 4 or Sec 5. But I think it's still good to prepare you and to get you aware of what you will be tested on first. Okay, so you have 4 papers altogether. Paper 1 basically is your writing, and it comprises of 3 components. Section A is editing. Okay, section B is basically your situational writing. And section C is your continuous writing. All right. So these are the 3 components that make up your paper 1. All right. And then you have your paper 2, which comprises of 3 sections, basically 3 types of text. And based on 3 types of text, they will ask you comprehension questions. So the first piece will be your visual text. Second one is a piece of narrative text in which they will definitely ask you a lot of like language use questions. And the last one would be your non-narrative text. Okay, non-narrative texts are very factual. So what comes with non-narrative text? Actually, you do have another additional part, which is your summary. Okay, so you are actually expected to summarize part of the text. Right? So these 3 components will make up your paper 2. And of course, paper 3 is actually your oral. I mean, technically it's not physically a paper, but they still call it paper 3 because there are still some things that they will give you, like for example, like the reading aloud section. But nowadays for spoken interaction, it's actually based on a video. It's no longer based on like a topic of discussion. Okay, so oral basically there are 2 components. One of it is reading aloud. Okay, and another one would be spoken interaction. It's a little bit different from primary school because the spoken interaction part, it's like I said, it's in the form of a video. Okay, now last one, of course, is your listening. Right, so I think it's good to be familiar with what are we preparing for actually? Now that you're only Sec 1, right? So what are you really preparing for? And obviously, through the 4 years of education or 5 years of education, you are expected to be very well informed and also be very clear of what is expected. Okay, I think I have a new student, Farha. Farha, I actually don't have your name on my list. Are you Ibrahim? Farha? Okay, I think it's also good if you can just turn on your video. If not, it seems like I'm not talking to anyone. Okay, so please, if you can, please turn on your videos. Farha, are you Ibrahim? Because I don't have your name on it, but I'm missing Ibrahim and Singi. Thank you, Farha, for turning on your video. Thank you, Dhruv. Okay, so at least we can see each other's faces, right? You never know. Who knows? You'll see each other in tertiary education. Now that even though you're in different secondary schools, okay, but eventually, who knows? You might become friends one day. Okay. Ibrahim, great. Thank you for changing your name, so I know you are Ibrahim. Okay, so why am I going through this? One of the reasons is also because Jay, you will start video later, huh? Okay, that's fine. Okay, one of the reasons is because I want you to be very clear of what is expected. Secondly, also I want to highlight that precisely because there are so many components, that's the reason why for our 88 tuition, it's quite impossible to cover all aspects in a single lesson. Okay, given that we only have 1.5 hours. Yeah. So what we usually do is that we will definitely at least cover 2 or 3 of these components in each tutorial lessons. And now we will have a specific learning objective. Okay. So for example, for today, the specific learning objective is really on compo, And by compo, it can be seed writing, it can be continuous writing, right? Situation writing or continuous. But specifically, we are trying to learn to define keywords in questions. Okay, so define keywords, basically, we are trying to highlight certain keywords and also learn to unpack the question by defining the keywords. Okay, next thing, we want to also learn to relate keywords to personal experiences. And lastly, eventually, the outcome is that we want to develop a relatable storyline. Okay, so I will say this part here, today's objective is mainly covering paper 1. Okay, we're going to talk about how to come up with a storyline, how do we define keywords and all. Based on personal experience. So I think by personal experience, you can already sort of guess that the genre that we are touching on is personal recount. Okay, I know some of you might have already been exposed. Some of you are thinking, what is personal recount, right? So in this case, basically personal recount is a genre of writing. In your whole secondary school life, you are supposed to learn 4 types of genre. In terms of continuous writing, you need to learn personal recount, you need to learn, basically personal recount falls under narrative. Okay, so different genres, like example, you have your narratives, which personal recount falls under, because personal recount is basically a narrative that is written from a first person point of view. Okay, so that's personal recount. Then next one that you're going to learn is descriptive, which will most likely be introduced in Sec 2, but some schools introduce it in Sec 1. Okay, you're going to learn expository. Expository is basically weighing out the pros and cons of things, or discussion. Expository. Basically, expository has discursive essay or argumentative essay. When you discuss and when you argue are 2 different things. When you discuss, it's probably in a manner whereby you have the maturity to weigh the pros and cons. But argumentative, you are quite strong and firm in terms of your viewpoints. So that's the difference. Okay, so in time to come, we're definitely going to explore all these different genres. Okay. Okay, so today let's just touch a little bit on compo first. Let's unpack the question. Remember, we are supposed to define keywords, right? So it's quite standard. They will give you a word limit. Okay, my recommendation is do not write lower than the lower limit, because that only suggests your marker that you do not have enough content. And when you do not have enough content, they cannot pass you very well for content. And sometimes they might even fail you. Okay. And when you do not have enough content, do they have a lot of language parts to mark? They also will not have, right? So if you write too little words, basically you definitely won't do well for content, and then your language will suffer too. So in the end, you won't score well. Anything more than 500, I also would not recommend, because that implies that you are probably a bit repetitive and you might write a lot of redundant words. So I think it's not recommended as well. The best thing is maybe about 400 words, around there. Okay, so this question is on the family crisis. Okay, usually the question for personal recount is not as such. Okay, it's not like like this is an article, right? So it's an article and then a noun. It's not in this manner. Usually for personal recount, they will say, write about a time when you faced a family crisis. So that is usually the standard question in terms of topic. But sometimes they might still put this. Why? Because this one can become descriptive. This one can become personal recount. So then it becomes a hybrid question. So sometimes they will also ask you the question in this manner, or give you the topic in this manner. Okay. So obviously, I think we have already identified, we will definitely be able to identify the 2 key words here, family and crisis, right? So what does family mean to you? Anybody? What is the definition of family? How do we define family? Yulian, how do we define family? Yulian, how do we define family? Family is, I mean, if you were to really go and look at the definition, it's basically a group of two or more, sorry, not two, one or more parents and children living as a unit. I guess the reason why they say one or more parents is because in some family units they actually have parents who are divorced, right? So then it's one or more. But then again, I think this definition is a little bit confined. Okay, this is the standard Cambridge Dictionary definition. It's a little bit more confined because I feel like there are a lot of different family dynamics nowadays. Yeah. So Galvin, I just saw your response. A family is any gathering of people firmly related by blood, guardians, youngsters, uncles, aunties, and cousins. Yeah, I do agree with that also. It's not just about parents and children anymore. So Yulian, also, I've just seen your response. Sorry, just now I wasn't looking at the chat. A group of people who are related. Yeah. Okay, related a bit brief, but generally, I think everybody have different definition of family. But I guess in totality, family really is just people who you live with, and maybe you do have some relations with them. Might not be blood relations. Okay. So next one is a crisis. What do we mean by crisis? Crisis is often okay, I think I'll just show you the next page. Okay, crisis is usually thought of as a time of intense difficulty, whereby you face great difficulty. Okay, so this will be unpacking. So this first part, basically, I'm just going through how do you define and how do you unpack the question. Firstly, of course, you have to identify keywords. Next, you have to sort of like think about what does it mean. Okay, how do we define these words? Yeah. Okay, so what is a personal recount? Okay. I'm not sure how many of you have done it in school, how many of you have not. Some schools decide to do compre first, and some schools later on will do personal recount. But I'm quite sure that for all secondary, because previously when I was teaching in St. Hilda's Secondary, we also did personal recount in Sec 1. Okay. I guess it's an easier genre to start with. Then eventually, when you go to Sec 2, then that's when you get exposed to expository writing, right? Okay, so what is personal recount exactly? Personal recount basically is an essay in which the writer shares his or her personal experiences, values, and situations. It will definitely describe the transformation. Okay, so the transformation meaning there will be some changes. There might be like a change in mood, change in perspective, whether or not positive or negative. Okay, in an individual because of the events and occurrences. Now, if there aren't any changes in moods or feelings or even perspectives, then it's very boring, right? It's supposed to follow sort of follow the organization of a narrative. There should be a rising action, a climax, a falling action as well. Okay. Okay, so usually personal recount will recall a specific incident. I want to highlight because usually the question will be very specific. You just need to give one specific incident. And some students get so carried away from one incident leads on to another incident